Horror intends to make you scared. It wants you to squirm, to cover your eyes, to tell your friends about what you saw, and then think about it before you go to bed. It's a genre that works because it lingers in the psyche, making you think about those disturbing moments for years to come. However, which moments are the worst of the worst? Which movies took things just a little too far? Well, today on Top 5 Scary Videos, I'm going to be counting down our list of the top 5 scary horror movies that went too far part 2. Before we begin though, be sure to stick around until the end of the video where I'll be responding to some of your comments. With that, let's jump in. In at number 5 we have Brain Dead. Brain Dead, also known as Dead Alive to Americans, is a 1992 New Zealand splatstick zombie comedy horror film directed by Peter Jackson and written by Jackson, Fran Walsh and Stephen Sinclair. The film follows Lionel, a man living with his mother Vera in a Victorian mansion who gets into trouble for his relationship with a Spanish shopkeeper's daughter, Paquita. When a rabbit hybrid animal monster bites Vera, she gradually converts the residents of Newtown into a zombie horde. Now this movie manages to go too far in the opposite direction compared to the rest of our list that's coming. The movie is just completely over the top and spirals into complete and utter mayhem, and has no regard for anything other than the sheer amount of blood and gore in the movie. The movie is absolutely disgusting, with it reveling in its practical effects and seeking to spread as much blood as any movie that has come before it. However, because of this, it works. This is one of the few movies on our list that I will commend for going too far, because it truly pays off. At the time of its release, David Stratton, writing for Variety, called it Jackson's best film to date and praised the humour, acting and technical quality, gore effects and makeup. He stated, I quote, "Kiwi gore specialist Peter Jackson, who goes for broke with an orgy of bad taste and splatter humour. Some will recoil from the gore, but Brain Dead wasn't made for them." The movie has a huge cult following and a lasting legacy, with actor Simon Pegg stating in his 2012 book that Brain Dead is one of the main influences on his 2004 zombie film Shaun of the Dead. In at number 4 we have Cannibal Holocaust. Cannibal Holocaust is a 1980 Italian cannibal film directed by Ruggero Deodato and written by Gianfranco Clarisi. It stars Robert Kerman as Harold Monroe, an anthropologist from New York University who leads a rescue team into the Amazon rainforest to locate a crew of filmmakers. The crew had gone missing while filming a documentary on local cannibal tribes. When the rescue team is only able to recover the crew's lost cans of film, an American television station wishes to broadcast the footage as a sensationalized television special. However, upon viewing the reels, Monroe is appalled by the team's actions and objects to the station's intent to air the documentary. Since its initial release, Cannibal Holocaust has been the target of censorship by moral and animal activists. Other than graphic gore, the film contained several scenes of sexual violence and genuine cruelty to animals, which is absolutely disgusting. 10 days after its premiere in Milan, Cannibal Holocaust was confiscated under the orders of a local magistrate. And on top of that, director Ruggero Deodato was charged with obscenity. In January 1981, during the film's theatrical run in France, the magazine Photo suggested that certain deaths depicted in the film were real, which would have made Cannibal Holocaust a snuff film. The courts truly believed that the actors who portrayed the missing film crew and the native actress featured in the impalement scene were killed for the camera. However, this was not true. Despite the snuff film claims being disproven, the Italian courts still decided to ban the movie due to the genuine animal slaying, citing animal cruelty laws and honestly, preach. In at 3 we have Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Released in 1974 and directed by Tobe Hooper, Texas Chainsaw Massacre follows a group of friends who fall victim to a family of cannibals while on their way to visit an old homestead. Now, from the off, the movie took things a little too far, even with its marketing, with it being marketed as based on true events in order to lure in audiences. Now, throughout filming, there were many moments that took things way too far, with one of them being the use of real human bones. That's right, much of the furniture and decor were all made out of real bones, which is absolutely disgusting. On top of that, the heroic moment where Marilyn Burns escapes Leatherface by jumping through a window, well, that was all real. She actually jumps, leaving her injured, bruised and bloody. So in the final moments of the film, when we see her in the back of the pickup truck, screaming and laughing, for the most part, that is her own blood. If I were her, I wouldn't have been too pleased, and I doubt she was, with director Tobe Hooper stating that everyone hated me by the end of production. It just took years for them to kind of cool off. Despite that, the movie has an impressive legacy, with Texas Chainsaw Massacre being considered one of the greatest and most controversial horror films of all time, and a major influence on the horror genre as a whole. In 1999, Richard Zolan of Time commented that it had, I quote, "set new standards for slasher films," and he's not wrong. wrong. The movie resulted in several remakes, reboots, sequels, and prequels, but nothing will ever quite top the original. In at number 2 we have Poltergeist. Poltergeist is a 1982 supernatural horror film directed by Tobe Hooper, once again, and written by producer Steven Spielberg, Michael Grace, and Mark Victor. The movie is set in a California suburb, with the plot focusing on a family whose home is invaded by malevolent ghosts that abduct their young daughter, and the family's attempt to bring her back into the real world. Now, this movie took things way too far in many ways, with some audiences not being aware of the real-life horrors they were actually seeing on screen. One of the most famous scenes features JoBeth Williams' character, Diane, falling into the family's pool, and it's filled with skeletons. Terrifying, right? Well, what makes this moment that much more terrifying is the simple fact that those skeletons were actually real, yet the actors weren't informed of that. This moment is what many people credit to the haunting of the movie. Yep, following the release, many strange occurrences happened, specifically to some of the actors. Dominique Dunne, who played Dana, was murdered. She was strangled by her abusive ex-boyfriend. On top of that, an exorcism was performed on the set of the sequel, with Will Sampson, who was concerned about the use of real skeletons on the set of the first film, performing an exorcism on the set of the second in 1984. The young star of the movie, Heather O'Rourke, also passed away in February 1988 at the age of 12, just months before the release of Poltergeist 3. Ultimately, many credit the unfortunate incidents as the results of a haunting that took place on the set of the first movie, a haunting that began with the use of real skeletons. But Spielberg has some regrets. And finally, coming in at number 1 we have Peeping Tom. Released in 1960 and directed by Michael Powell, Peeping Tom is a psychological horror thriller that revolves around a serial killer who murders women while using a portable film camera to record their dying expressions of terror. It is quite funny looking back on this movie because unlike modern horror, this is not a film that will have you reaching for a blanket to hide behind. Yet the movie was met with huge amounts of backlash, considering it came even before more shocking films like Psycho. Audiences were nowhere near ready for what this film had in store for them. What most folks might not know though is that the themes of voyeurism in Peeping Tom are also explored in several films by Alfred Hitchcock, including Vertigo, with film historian Charles Barr pointing out that the film's title sequence and several shots seem to have inspired moments in Peeping Tom. Anyway, I digress. Peeping Tom was a lot to swallow back in the 60s, with the movie's controversial subject matter and its extremely harsh reception having a hugely negative impact on Michael Powell's career as a director in the United Kingdom. Powell was told quite quickly that he had taken things too far with his movie, and was subsequently shunned to the point that his reputation and career were ruined. The movie's depiction of violence and its lurid sexual content made it a controversial film, with Karl-Heinz Bohm recalling that the film's premiere, nobody from the audience went to shake the hand of him or Michael Powell. However, like many films that were shunned back in the day, there was a reappraisal many years later, with Peeping Tom earning itself a cult following. Powell noted ruefully in his autobiography, I quote, "I make a film that nobody wants to see, and then 30 years later everybody has either seen it or wants to see it. Contemporarily, the film is considered a masterpiece and among the best horror films of all time." Well, there we have it. Do you guys agree with that list? Are there any horror movies that we missed? Leave us all your thoughts and feelings in the comments down below, and perhaps we can do a part 3. Before I go though, I just want to respond to a few comments from one of our last videos, top 5 scary, underrated horror movies that are rarely discussed. Trent Freeman said, "I love that we have this little horror community to share and enjoy." Me too. It's like a little area on the internet that no one knows about. Big Joe said, "Who pinched your arm? I did not think the Dark Queen could be harmed." I honestly wasn't going to respond to all these comments about the bruises on my arms because I had no reason to respond to it. But a lot of you were actually genuinely concerned. There were some people that were hoping that I was safe and that I was in a safe space and that if I needed to talk, I could talk. No one hurt me. That's all you need to know. This is from an accident in the safety of my own home. Brian Baker said, "I'm not a fan of most torture porn, but Cheap Thrills had so much humor in it that it was pretty entertaining." That's very true. Cheap Thrills is a fun time, so it kind of makes what you're seeing a little easier to swallow because it's a lot. Russell Mallow said, "Pontypool is one of the best horror movies ever. Easily the first movie I suggest to anyone looking for something they haven't seen before." I completely agree. Pontypool is amazing, and still not a lot of people have seen it, but it's so good. And Canadian made, even better. The Dank Savage said, "The Collector and The Collection are very underrated. Great list. Lucy, keep on keeping on hotness." Thank you. The Collector and The Collection are both good. The Collector is slightly better, but I remember the first time I watched The Collector and I couldn't get up from my bed because I could have sworn there were traps lying around my house and I was gonna die some horrible death. So I didn't move from my bed for about 3 hours. I was so scared. I was so scared. ACDC09 said, Lucy, how about stream yourself watching your top 5 scariest movies and the top 5 most haunted places? 1 movie per haunted place, all alone at midnight. Well, all of us will be there with you, so you won't be completely alone, sort of. In no world am I ever gonna do that. Not in this lifetime anyway. Watching my videos in haunted locations? Not a chance. Don't know what would be worse, the haunted location or having to watch myself on repeat for 5 videos. And on that note, if you haven't already, be sure to give this video a big thumbs up, subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss another scary vid. And until next time, see you later. It's hard, I just want to look in the screen, you know? Let me just look at myself. Released in 1874, that's right.